Hello everyone and welcome to the Scary Story channel. Tonight I have a tale for you that will make you think twice about what you see in the shadows. It's about a man named Leo, an ordinary guy whose life took a turn into the truly bizarre, all because of a strange silhouette. Leo worked late nights as a graphic designer. His office was on the top floor of a quiet old building downtown. Most nights he was the last one to leave, the long corridors echoing with just his footsteps. He'd grown used to the solitude, finding a strange comfort in the emptiness of the building after dark. But one Tuesday night that comfort was shattered. He was packing up his bag, getting ready to head home, when a flicker of movement in the polished surface of the darkened window caught his eye. He paused, staring at his own reflection. But it wasn't his reflection that had moved. Standing just behind his image there was another shape, a tall, unnaturally thin silhouette. It was featureless, a void of black against the dim office lights reflected in the glass. Leo's heart leaped into his throat. He spun around, his eyes darting across the empty office. There was nothing. Just his desk, his chair, the humming computer. He was completely alone. He shook his head, blaming exhaustion. Too much caffeine, not enough sleep. It had to be a trick of the light, a figment of his tired imagination. He laughed it off, a nervous, hollow sound that seemed too loud in the silence. He grabbed his coat and hurried out, not wanting to linger a second longer. The next night he tried to put it out of his mind. He focused on his work, the colors and lines on his screen a welcome distraction. But as the hours crept by and the office emptied out again, a sense of unease settled over him. He couldn't shake the memory of that figure. He found himself glancing at the dark windows, his reflection looking back at him, alone. A wave of relief washed over him. It was just stress, after all. But then as he was saving his final project, he saw it again. This time it wasn't in the window. It was in the periphery of his vision, a flicker of movement near the frosted glass of the office door. He froze, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. He slowly turned his head. The silhouette was there, its form distorted by the textured glass. It was tall, slender, and utterly still, a patch of pure darkness against the faint light of the hallway. This was no trick of the light. Leo's breath hitched. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe. He was paralyzed by a fear so primal he couldn't even scream. Who was that? How did they get there without making a sound? He stared, waiting for it to move, to do something. But it just stood there, a silent, menacing observer. After what felt like an eternity, Leo mustered the courage to act. He didn't stand up. He didn't call out. He slowly, quietly, slid his hand to his mouse and clicked the icon to shut down his computer. The screen went black. He then ducked under his desk, his heart hammering against his ribs like a drum. He fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking so badly he could barely unlock it. He crawled on his hands and knees, keeping the desk between him and the door. He peered around the edge. The silhouette was gone. The hallway light through the frosted glass was unobstructed. He waited, listening. Silence. Was it a prank? One of his colleagues trying to spook him? It felt too real, too sinister for a simple joke. He finally scrambled to his feet, grabbed his things, and bolted for the door. He didn't even check to see if anyone was in the hallway. He just ran. Down the stairs, not waiting for the slow, creaky elevator. He burst out into the cool night air, gasping for breath, not stopping until he was safely in his car, locking the doors with a trembling hand. He didn't go to work the next day. He called in sick, telling his boss he had a terrible flu. He spent the day in his apartment, blinds drawn, jumping at every little sound. He couldn't get the image of the silhouette out of his head. The way it stood there, so unnaturally still. The absolute lack of any feature. It was like looking into a piece of the void that had taken a human-like shape. He knew he couldn't avoid the office forever. He had deadlines, a career. He tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a new security guard he hadn't been told about. Maybe someone from another floor had gotten lost. But none of those explanations felt right. They didn't account for the suffocating dread that had filled him. When he returned to work, he made a new rule for himself. Never be the last one to leave. He started packing up an hour earlier, making sure to leave with the evening cleaning crew or other late-working colleagues. For a few weeks it worked. Life returned to a semblance of normalcy. He started to believe he had imagined the whole thing, a temporary breakdown brought on by stress. Then came the night of the big project deadline. Everyone was staying late. The office was buzzing with energy, a stark contrast to the usual quiet. Leo felt safe, surrounded by people. As the night wore on, people started to finish their parts and head home, one by one. Leo was engrossed in his final edits, the pressure of the deadline pushing everything else from his mind. Before he knew it, he looked up from his screen and realized the office was silent again. The buzz was gone. He was alone. A cold chill snaked down his spine. He quickly checked the time. It was almost 2 a.m. He hadn't meant to stay this late. He immediately started saving his work, a familiar panic rising in his chest. As the progress bar filled, he risked a glance towards the office door. Nothing. He looked at the large windows that lined the far wall. They reflected the empty office, a dozen clones of his desk and chair staring back at him. And there, in each and every reflection standing right behind his chair, was the silhouette. It hadn't been just one. Now there were dozens of them, a silent army of shadows standing shoulder to shoulder behind him in the reflection. But when he whipped his head around to look at the physical space, the office was empty. There was no one there. It was only in the reflections. Leo didn't scream. He was beyond that. A strange calmness washed over him, the kind that comes when fear becomes so absolute it loops back around to something else. He slowly turned back to face the windows. The silhouettes were still there, watching him from the world behind the glass. He could see his own terrified face mirrored back at him, a pale, small figure surrounded by an army of darkness. One of them, the one directly behind him, began to move. It was slow, deliberate. It raised a long, thin arm and reached out, its shadowy fingers extending towards his reflection's shoulder. Leo watched, mesmerized in horror, as the silhouette's hand touched his reflection. He felt it. An icy coldness spread through his shoulder, a deep, bone-chilling cold that had nothing to do with the office air conditioning. It was a dead, empty cold. He could feel the pressure of its non-existent fingers on his jacket. He was being touched by something that wasn't physically there. That was the final straw. Leo scrambled away from his desk, tripping over his chair and crashing to the floor. He didn't look back. He crawled and scrambled his way to the door, fumbled it open, and fled into the hallway. He didn't stop running until he was miles away, driving with no destination in mind, just needing to put as much distance as possible between himself and that building. Leo never went back. He quit his job the next morning over a frantic, barely coherent phone call. He moved out of his apartment within the week and left the city altogether. He couldn't explain what had happened, and he didn't try. How do you tell people you were haunted by reflections? That you were touched by a shadow? He found a new job, a new life in a small town where the buildings weren't so tall and the nights weren't so dark. But he never truly escaped it. To this day, he avoids his own reflection. He covers the mirrors in his house, and he never, ever looks into a dark window at night. Because sometimes when he's not careful, when he catches a glimpse of himself in a shop window or a puddle on the street, he thinks he can see it. A tall, thin figure, standing just in the periphery, a silent shadow waiting in the background of his life. What was it? A ghost? A creature from another dimension? Or was it all just a product of Leo's fraying mind? We may never know. But it serves as a chilling reminder. Sometimes, the scariest monsters aren't the ones that jump out at you. They're the ones that just stand there in the corner of your eye, silently watching. Thank you for listening to this story on the Scary Story channel. If you enjoyed this journey into the shadows, please hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next tale. Until next time, stay safe, and be careful what you see in the dark.